Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Eleftheria, and tonight I thought I would tell you a little bit more about my backstory. Specifically, I want to tell you about the moment when in my youth I went from having spiritual experiences that were limited to a few interesting dreams or other experiences like that, or a few interesting synchronicities here and there, to discovering for the first time that our thoughts, and actually more specifically our directed will, has the power to shape reality itself. This is the story of my first ever magical workings and how that opened up my world to going on to becoming a practicing magician. So that now I've been doing it for more than half my life. And it all began with some dabbling and experimentation that I did as a teenager in school. To this day, I think that some of my earliest magical workings were some of my most successful. So that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. How was it that I came to be a magician? If you've seen some of my previous videos, you might have seen I did a video on how I first discovered that I was a magician. How I went to a holiday to the Glass House Mountains, a family holiday, and there were a series of synchronicities that led me to magic and discovering that what I was incarnated into this world to do was to learn magic and to study esoteric religion. And what I was meant to do with my life would emerge from me learning how to do all of that. So I talked about that in that previous video, which I'll link in the description below. And so by the time I came back from this holiday, shortly after I began year 12 at school, I was a very different kind of person back then. I was very dark in my aesthetic, very brooding. I modelled my appearance after the vampire Lestat from Queen of the Damned, or perhaps some other kind of vampire. So that was kind of where I was at that point in my life. And I knew that I had to look into magic. And it was a good time for me to start as well, because although I was still considering myself a Catholic, I was having some serious doubts about my faith come the first few months of the year. And I started looking elsewhere for the spiritual answers, the spiritual fulfillment that I failed to find in the Catholic Church. And so what better opportunity to start exploring magic? I quickly started looking online at different spells, things like that. This was the noughties, so back then the biggest thing around in terms of magic and doing spells and all of that was Wicca, and, well, you know, the most popularized form of the occult. So naturally that's what I came across as I searched the web. I found a spell which was a full moon ritual for good luck, and I decided this looks pretty easy to do. I'm going to do this as my first ritual. I waited till the full moon, and then I went outside in the garden and I looked up at the moon and I said a prayer, and I asked for good luck, to get the things in life that I really wanted, which I felt I hadn't got by praying for the previous several years as a Christian. So I did the spell on the full moon, and then things started to happen. I had a friend who had a friend from a different school, an all-girls school, who was going to that school's year 12 ball. However, her partner fell through at the last minute and she needed someone to go with her at the ball. And this friend of mine was going with another girl from that school. And so he asked me if I would like to go to the ball with this girl who had just lost her date. And I agreed, because I had decided that I might be able to get a girlfriend if I crashed this school's ball. So that's what I did. I went along as this girl's partner in a purely platonic sense to help her out, and made my way into this ball. I didn't know anybody except for my friend, but I was looking, I was searching for somebody. And the spooky thing was that the night of the ball was on a full moon. The very next full moon from when I did the spell. So the cycle had closed in on itself. And so I thought this was a very auspicious night, and I was sure that I had a date with destiny. So I went to the ball, the night went on, I didn't meet anybody. I went to the after party afterwards, didn't meet anybody. And I felt quite disappointed at the end of it. But unbeknownst to me, there was another girl at the ball who caught sight of me across the room, and something came over her when she saw me, and she had this thought that she just had to get to know me. She had to meet me. It was an important thing for her to do, and she couldn't explain why. So after the night of the ball, she did some networking and communicating with people and found out that I was this guy's friend who had invited me to the ball, and then got my details and reached out to me on MSN. And eventually, we became friends, and then I asked her out, and we became girlfriend and boyfriend. And actually, she has gone on to become my wife now. So from that very first magical working, I found a wife. So that's just incredible. Actually, she told me later on that that night, in the lead up to the ball, she had actually done not necessarily magic of her own, but a bit of manifestation. She had used the secret, the law of attraction, and asked the universe to send her a boyfriend who was a dark boy who was into metal music. So, we both were projecting our intentions to find somebody, and our wills just aligned beautifully in that way, in that moment. And the rest, of course, is history. So I wouldn't know for several months after I did this first full moon spell just how successful it would go on to be. But I thought that the getting into the ball in the first place on the following full moon was a pretty impressive synchronicity. So I was determined to try my luck with more spells to see what other results I could create in the real world. So the next opportunity for me to accumulate knowledge on magic and how to use it came when I was spending a night out, and I was hanging out with another good friend of mine, and we were checking out different shops. We went to this one particular bookshop that was quite good, and I went and I browsed the occult section, because of course that's what I was looking for. And I happened upon a book, this book here actually, the Necronomicon spell book, which I found intriguing, and I bought it, and then I had a flick through as we were walking back to my friend's place. And it was a very unusual book. It had a lot of different spells in it. It allows you to work with spirits, who are the 50 names of Marduk, for various different effects in the physical world. It was a fascinating book. And what it actually is it's an excerpt of the Simon Necronomicon, one of the books out there in circulation which purports to be the real Necronomicon. It's not. And I know the real story of how that book came about. But anyway, one section of the Simon Necronomicon is the Book of 50 Names. And that's what the Necronomicon spellbook is. It's based very much on ancient Sumerian kind of stuff. Obviously, it's a modern book, but it draws from that source material. So I took the book home, and I decided that I was going to try out some of the 50 names and see what I could get. I set up a little ritual, created a sacred space with a little table, and I created my sigil out of paper. I burnt some patchouli incense just to create a mood, and put some candles around, probably traced some kind of magic circle. But it was quite nerve-wracking the first time. Like you don't know what's going to jump out and get you. But somehow I knew deep down that using my own mind, I could sever the connection to whatever spiritual realm I was contacting at any time. So for some reason I just felt that inside me, and that gave me the courage that I needed. And so I tried out a few of these 50 names and calling forth the spirit and drawing their sigil. One of them was for knowledge, I believe, and that was so that I would do well on a test at school. One was to get a fortune or to see where wealth is hidden. And then a third one was to control the weather, to make it rain. So the first one I did was to do well in this test. So I created the sigil, I did the test at school. Of course, it would be some time before I got the results. So while I was waiting, I did the spell to find hidden treasure or find where something of value is hidden. And when I did that, I got a result, but it wasn't really that impressive. So I came home and I found that I had a bank statement in the mail, which told me how much money I had. Technically giving me what I asked for, but hardly impressive as far as the results of magic go. So I decided to do the third one, to make it rain. And to my astonishment, despite the fact that at that particular point in time we were only expecting sunny weather, one day soon after I had done the spell to make it rain, storm clouds blew in. I remember I was outside the school library when this happened at school, and the librarians noted how unusual the change in weather was and how unexpected it was. And then a few hours later, it was pouring down with rain. So I was very satisfied with this result, and I was sure that it was because of the magic. And when I got my test results back, it turned out I did do quite well on the test. So now I had decided that magic really did work, and I was very impressed with the results, and I kept experimenting as the year went on. But I wasn't just experimenting with getting external effects in this way, but I was also looking for other forms of magic that I could do. And one of these was Enochian magic. I managed to find another book, which was one of Lon Milo Duquette's early books on Enochian magic, The Enochian World of Aleister Crowley, I believe it was called. And this was my introduction to Enochian magic. I experimented with the seniors and other angelic spirits of the watchtowers, and I was really astonished at how I could receive visions. I got these images in my head of these strange looking beings that were vaguely humanoid, but also composed of geometric shapes. This is how the angels appeared to me in the visionary experiences that I was having as I entered this altered state by reading the calls. And I was amazed at how my consciousness could change. If I called a spirit that was attributed to Jupiter, I suddenly became magnanimous and jolly. If I called a spirit that was related to Venus, I felt a lot more emotional and sentimental, and how easily I could change my inner state just with a simple ritual. And so now I was impressed at the internal results that I could get with magic as well. And I was hungry for more and more of this knowledge, and I would roam around in the city and elsewhere, going to bookshops, looking for books of power, looking for occult books that would expand my knowledge of what was within the realm of possibility, experimenting with the occult. And I kept getting more and more impressive results and accumulating more and more knowledge. And I just knew that this was something that I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. And so as I approached the end of high school, I knew that my period of being in a socially repressive Catholic education was coming to an end, and that I would be independent. I would be free as a legal adult. And I now had an incredible tool in the form of magic to manifest things in my life that I wanted, which I had found difficult to get before. And so this was one of the most liberating periods of my life. And it really impressed upon me that the path that I was on now was where I was meant to be, and it was a path towards my ultimate freedom. The identity as a magician, which I had adopted after the synchronicities that I experienced on the family trip in the previous year, now was cemented by the fact that I had actually tried to do magic several times and found that it was a huge success. It literally changed my life. So I knew this was what I wanted to spend my life doing. Whatever else I was doing in life, magic would always be a part of it. And spirituality and self-transformation would always be a part of it. And so when I left school, I decided that I wanted to join a formal initiatory order that could teach me even more about magic. And eventually I found the OTO and continued my occult studies there. And I've now spent 19, going on 20 years practicing magic and exploring the esoteric. And as a result of being on that path, my life has been very eventful, to say the least. There have been some paths that I've gone down that have not been very good. There have been other paths that have brought an incredible amount of light into my life. This channel documents the experiences that I've had over the years, all the things that I've learned. But it all began with this period in my life when I was 16, 17, and I first started dabbling in the occult. And I first learnt that I was a magician. And perhaps you've had a similar experience, awakening to the fact that there's something magical in you, that you can change your reality at will, or that there's things out there that are so beyond belief that it's shocking to learn about them, and that has put you on some kind of a spiritual path or path of inquiry. But what do you think? Does this story resonate with you? Have you had any of your own similar experiences? I'd love to hear from you. Leave any comments you have down below. But I hope that you enjoyed a bit of my origin story, which I've shared with you tonight. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to this channel to support my work, hit join or thanks to support me further. Please hit the notification bell when you subscribe so YouTube actually notices this video. And if you want to support me even more, feel free to get some merch from my merch store. But thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.